despite being a pawn down. Sorry, Tanya, I just really wanted to emphasize that point.
This was a masterclass that you just gave, and of such importance because really king pawn endings are super instructive. And you pointed out and highlighted all the important factors in this one, how black keeps it under control on the queen side, making sure that white's king cannot advance any further from b5 after you go king b7. It doesn't even matter if you take your king to a6, black will have the move king to c6, and you've got everything sorted there. But the more important point is, how do you handle the king side? And super critical to make sure that you understand the idea that the g5 pawn can simply be given up. White can be a pawn up, but cannot go on to make any more progress. Even if this position was to come, black falls back with the king to c7, and after king b5 will not be able to repeat anymore. Not to repeat, but not to be able to take on g5 and make any more progress. And Robert, I think this one will end in a draw, in a king pawn ending that required precision, but both players have shown that they're up for it and their endgame knowledge is on point.
And yeah, there's one last point I want to make is if you play f5, you see again the evaluation change, because pawn takes, white may be thinking about getting a queen, but black actually sacrifices a pawn. It's not about pawn quantity in many endgames. It's about the quality. h6, g4, h3. The black pawn gets to the other side, whereas white doesn't get there, because if you take, the king is already in the square, so you're not going to make a queen. If you play f6, the king goes back, and now the king is in the other square. Your g-pawn is too slow because h2, h1 is a queen in just a couple turns. So I just wanted to point all these little things out. They're very important, and we are going to see a draw very shortly. I think we might see this draw. After king c6, pawn g5, king c7, we'll see the move king a7, and these moves are going to be forced back and forth. King c6 to c7, king a6 to a7, because if the white king decided to go back to b5, king b7, and you bring your king back, and we get this situation where the king drops back, you see black is now suddenly winning because you have a passed pawn. So even though white is a pawn ahead, black is not playing b4. I showed why that doesn't work. You take on c4 and then play king b6. The king will have to move at some point soon. The king goes up. I push my pawn. I'm going to keep doing that. Use the pawn as a decoy. And this king is going to go full Pac-Man and take all of these pawns on the king side.
Robert, you've just called out the whole game, because as you were pointing out, the players realize these lines, and we're seeing the current position with king c7. And very important that after king a7, king c6, white also doesn't have the option to go king b8, trying to come from the other side. He's too slow getting over to the king side because black just goes on to queen the c pawn, and it's going to be a lot faster. And there we see king a7 has been played on the board, king c6, king a6. It's the only way. It's almost like a mutual zugzwang with only one good move for both players, and this will end in handshakes. But a nice technique there by Gukesh and by Nodirbek. With this draw, Gukesh finally starts on the leaderboard.
And there it is. The draw is agreed. No progress could be made. These two youngsters, they're talking about the game. They will see so much more of each other. I hope that they're friends, because they're going to go face to face for decades to come. But in this particular game, progress was stalled. No side could inch into the other person's position any more than we saw. A draw was the correct result, Tanya. I think it was a well-played game. And for Gukesh, he could take a bit of a breath. He has made a draw. He's on the scoreboard. And now 10 rounds remain. Take it game by game.
These two players have such a bright future ahead of them. And Robert, you're absolutely right. Along that path, they will face each other time and time again. And every time that they've played so far, it's been fighting chess, and this game also coming down to a king pawn endgame where it was forced into a repetition, just goes on to show that neither of them are willing to back down, and they stay on the board to analyze the subtleties of the position. Just goes on to show how chess always wins, and their priority is to get stronger. And regardless of how competitive they are on the board, once it's over, the main motive is to get stronger and to get better.
Absolutely. So these two, they shake hands, and they're going to talk about it for a while. I mean, it was an interesting game lots of subtleties that when you just quickly press the next button and you're just clicking next move, you don't analyze as much. And so for these players, they want to talk about it, see what their thoughts were, see what the other player was thinking. And it's just such a good sight to see, honestly, because these two players are the future of chess. They're the present of chess. Nodirbek is an Olympiad gold medalist with his team. Gukesh won the Olympiad gold medal for board 1 ahead of all of the best players on the planet. So these two are just magnificent chess players, great human beings, and they are going to be role models for the next generation of chess superstars. But with that game in the books, we still have 3 games remaining. The other 2 teenagers are facing off in Praggnanandhaa and Vincent Keimer. Arjun Erigaisi, he's trying to survive against Levon Aronian in that game. So, Tanya, I feel like with Jordan van Forest struggling, it looks like he's going to go down in that one against Fabiano. Maybe we should tune into the end game between Arjun and Levon.
Absolutely, and we see the 2 youngsters still continue to discuss their games out. I wouldn't be surprised if we again see the arbiters intervene and say it's time to go back, the other games are on.